Welcome back to the Marcus Milione podcast. I am your host, Marcus Milione. Today I have a guest that I've had the pleasure of knowing for my entire life, and that would be my dad. His name is Lou. I'll be referring to him as Dad. And before I let him introduce himself, so one thing you should know about my dad is that anytime he's going to show up somewhere, he's going to show up super early. I don't care if it's I don't care if it's the airport. I don't care if it's a sporting event. He's going to get there super early. So, being crunched for time getting here and it starting to rain in the process of us getting here, Ubers were going to have us getting here late. So we said screw it and took a city bike. Terrible mistake. If you've ever lived in Manhattan, you know how soaking wet you can get. So we got here soaking wet. He had a dress shirt on and everything, and he looked professional, and now he's got a T-shirt on.
Your T-shirt.
Yeah, so anyway, I'll let him introduce himself, give you a brief background, and then I'll jump back in his life till about when he was my age.
So how far, what do you want me to give, like
You
a
just
professional
give-
background?
Yeah, like, I don't know, your name,
Okay.
what you do now.
So hi, I'm Lou Milione. I'm Marcus's dad. I currently work for a firm called Guidepost Solutions and do corporate investigations and compliance work like the last 4 years, but several phases in my career. I retired around 4 years ago after serving as a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration for a little over 20 years. Before that, I had done a lot of things, went to graduate school, worked as an actor on and off, and meat packer, bouncer.
Okay. Wait, now you're
Oh,
getting into
right.
all the good
Oh,
stuff.
Oh, I didn't know. You told me.
Yeah. All right. So,
All right.
all right.
So what did
I want-
you asked the question.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I
Okay.
know. Obviously,
All right.
I want to jump back to. Let's just start when you were 18 years old, right? So, I assume you're graduating high school at 18.
Yeah.
Now, has the acting stuff started at
Um,
this point?
Yeah, I'd done a couple plays in high school, and decided that that's what I wanted to do. Was to be an actor, and was told, you'll never make it, all that stuff.
Yeah,
And
we
then-
like that.
And then I started college at Villanova, and eventually then spent.
So you went right from high school to college as like a normal person would, essentially.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then, so I know you were at college, and then was college just not for you? What'd you do with the acting? Did you join the theater program?
No, so before, to back up a little bit, my senior year in high school, I almost didn't graduate from high school. I had gotten accepted to Villanova early, and then the movie Taps came into our town, and I was interested in acting and was brought on as like an extra day player, and just stopped going to high school. And then
Did your parents know about this?
well, they kind of yes and kind of no, but anyway,
Mhm.
so that kind of cemented it. I thought, oh, this might be interesting, but then I went on to Villanova, and then eventually,
So Taps ended, and then Villanova started.
Villanova started my freshman year, right?
Okay, so you're at Villanova, and you are still acting, or you're just studying at this point?
At that point, I was just studying and had an interest still, but was kind of deciding between the Marines and like the going to law school through the Marines or that kind of program. But then wanted to give acting a shot, and launched up to New York City. I think between my freshman and sophomore year in college, and my goal was to get an agent and start auditioning. I had no real experience other than theater in high school, and
So what was like? So the summer going into your sophomore year, you decide that you're going to spend the summer in New York City, but I assume you didn't know anybody here.
that's right.
So
yeah.
as far as like getting here, did you tell your parents?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
support yourself? How did you find a place to live?
So I told my parents, and I actually did it when my dad was. I think I did it when my dad was away on a business trip, and he came back, and I was heading to New York, and stayed at the YMCA over on 34th Street. It was like $50 a week, and had some, eventually found a job to contribute, and was just going to spend the summer and just knock on doors relentlessly, hoping to get an agent. In my mind, I thought, well, if you get an agent, you can get auditions, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know about how to do any of it.
So in the process of you finding an agent, you weren't represented, obviously. So were you going to castings or anything at this time?
No. What I did was I had some photos taken, and then every day I'd get the list of all the different agents. I'd look for auditions, but I knew that the real stuff you needed a real agent, and I would go. I found all their addresses and would go to every 5 or 7 a day. Mm-hmm. And back then, I don't know if it's still the way it is now. You get there and it says, "Do not knock, do not do whatever." So I knocked on every single one, and they answered, and I'd say, "Here's my little goofy headshot and a little in the beginning,
a little resume."
Yeah, but in the beginning I did a whole cover letter, which was really stupid, like a business thing. It wasn't like that, and did that all summer. Eventually got an agent. Someone signed me, and started to audition for things, and then that continued as I went back to Villanova.
So you did that for the summer, and then in your mind it was like, I'm going to do this for the summer, and then I'm going to go back to school in the what is it, the spring, the fall?
The fall. No, so I was going to. It wasn't just going to be for the summer. It was to get an agent and then see if I could start to break in. And
then you were done school.
No, I was going to go back to Villanova, and then if I had auditions, I would go up to New York.
Okay.
And
for people that don't know, like Philly and Villanova is about an hour and a half from New York City, so that is doable. Right. It would have been hard with your schedule.
Yeah, well, it was all right.
College.
I ended up dropping some classes and going, part-time, and then going back and forth some, and continued limping along like that through my sophomore year.
Okay, so were you limping along, presuming you got some work?
No. I was getting some stuff. I was getting auditions. I was auditioning for some big things, like big movies and stuff, and I was getting called back, but I wasn't landing anything. And then I kind of came to the realization I either have to go all in or not, and auditioned for a theater school in New York, and then got accepted to that, left Villanova, and went up and studied.
So you left Villanova after your sophomore year?
I think, maybe in my junior year. I don't remember. I had like a semester and a half left of Villanova when I left.
Oh, so you were in your senior year.
No, I wasn't in my senior year. It was maybe a little more than that, but I actually don't remember. It was in my junior
Well,
year.
either way, you decide that you're done with Villanova and you go to this acting school.
Yeah, I went to the Circle in the Square Theater School. Yep.
And that's where you introduced me to that guy that one time.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you get up there, and now you're all in.
Right.
So you continue living where you were living? Like,
No,
how are you supporting yourself at this point?
Well, that's when I started. So it was a full-time program, and I was bouncing I got a job bouncing at the Palladium back then. So I do that like till the sun came up, and then have the classes during the day, and did that throughout the year, studying. I lived in a number of different places. I lived in somebody's living room, like a lot of different places.
So just grinding.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was fun, and
as you're going to school, are you allowed to just audition? Are you still auditioning, trying to get roles, or are you just trying to get better?
Well, I do. I still have the same agent, Peggy Hadley. I think she's passed. So she took a shot with me, and I was still auditioning for some things. And my thought was, if something landed, I'd leave school and go do it, because it would be like, that was the whole goal, right?
Yeah.
That didn't happen. So I did one year, and then I worked in a summer. I think in the summer. Oh yeah, in the summer up north, up in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, New Hampshire Shakespeare Festival or something, like doing plays in small parts.
Okay.
And then went back, did my second year at Circle in the Square. And
was that just a 2-year program, or is that a full 4?
No, 2 years. It's a 2 year.
So you do 2, and then after that, it's just diving into your auditions.
Well,
or
you
whatever?
you can do whatever. And I was still signed with Peggy. I finished at Circle in the Square. I got asked to go to the Williamstown Theater Festival. I had an amazing experience there, working with like Joanne Woodward, a bunch of really good people. Worked in a bunch of plays there, and then came back and was still kind of bouncing, doing things in between, and then landed my first professional play at the Portland Stage Company. And the play was Lyle Kessler's Orphans, which was like a super powerful play. And so I started to get some professional work, regional theater, and then eventually some off-Broadway work.
So it started to snowball a bit.
Well, I wouldn't call it a snowball. It was I would get some work, and then I'd be back, I think, working in nightclubs. I would bounce from the Palladium to the Tunnel. I was a bouncer at the Tunnel, and then eventually a bartender at the Tunnel. So in between acting gigs, I would do that, and then eventually became a meat packer, and
Okay, so at the time you start, say you're getting your first like bigger gigs.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
Well, let me see. I was probably like 24. So I was around.
Okay.
I think I got my first professional gig. I got some commercial work before that, but my first play, that one I just mentioned, I think I was 24 years old.
Okay.
It was $300 a week. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah. Okay. So you're 24
In the
you're getting
unions.
your-
I'm in the
yeah,
unions.
You've got your union thing, which I know is important for a
Yeah.
lot of the actors, is to get the union because you get health insurance, stuff
Right.
like that. And then you said you're now meat packing.
Well, eventually, yeah. So with acting, I was dating your mom. I was dating your mom,
Mhm.
and
Still 24.
well, yeah, I met the first summer I came to New York. When between my sophomore and my freshman and sophomore year is when I first met Mom.
Okay.
I mean, I met her at Villanova, but then we first kind of started seeing each other.
Okay.
So all throughout this time, I was dating her.
Okay.
But yeah, so at 24, I did the play. You would come back, and some actors were going on unemployment, which is fine. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to like do things and experience things. The
Yeah.
clubs were kind of interesting. You saw an interesting side of the world. But I was doing that for a while, and then still dating Mom, getting some acting gigs.
Would you say the whole like you bouncing the club thing is that when you first started kind of just being able to read people?
Nah, I don't know. I mean, that's a subjective thing.
No, because you're observant, right?
Well, I mean, you get to see like the best and the worst, and it's just it is what it is. It's
okay. Fine.
So,
You're meat packing. You meet
well,
Mom.
I was working so I worked in those clubs, Palladium, the Tunnel, in between acting gigs, and then Mars was another nightclub right on the meatpacking district, and I was just so sick of working that scene, being in that scene, and I saw the meatpacking stuff, and I said, I knew that they started work at like before 3 a.m. and they were done by 1, and I thought, man, if there was a way I could do it, it's physical. The other part of me thought I'd enter a lot of like, mostly men. Now this is not sexist, but I was an actor, so I thought if I could work with these guys. They were older than I was, the majority of them. If I could work with them, they seemed like they're interesting, colorful characters. And number one, I could make enough money, hopefully save money to maybe get engaged, and then that was when I first saw it. When I would leave work to go home, when the sun was coming up, I see that they were cranking right on that Gansevoort Market on Washington Street. So,
and I mean, the meat packing that is not the meat packing that it is today.
No. It was completely different. There was a lot of
it's very seedy.
Prostitution, but then there were also it was the meat packing stuff there and some bars and stuff. But
yeah. So you do that, and how long? This time period from when you're I say 24 until when is there a change in either mindset or you either have to make a decision where
are you trying to move this along like to when I leave acting?
No, because there is more to your acting story. You end up in Chicago, that whole part of it. But I don't know when the period between like you meatpacking and then you eventually going to Chicago, and there's a bunch of different parts there.
Yeah. So I can do that. So during the time that I was meatpacking, my goal was to be a really good worker with a good reputation, such that if I got an acting job, that was always my goal, and I left, I'd have a job to come back to. And they were great to me. This is before I got married when I was working as the meat packer. So I had that where I left and I'd do a professional play somewhere. And in fact, off Broadway at the Public Theater, at the Joe Papp Theater, which was like a dream of mine to work there. I did a play there called Wojciech, and did that. But I knew I'd be going back to meatpack. Before that, though, actually, I jumped ahead because I'm getting old. I forgot.
No,
I jumped ahead because while I was meatpacking, I heard about an audition for a play in Chicago in 1989 called Bleacher Bums. So I took a train out and slept on a park bench. My agent set up the audition. Joe Mantegna was directing it. Slept on the park bench, went into the audition, and then there was actually somebody that I'd gone to acting school living there who was real nice to me, Jill, who kind of took care of me when I was there for that short period of time. Auditioned, took the train all the way back, and then got the job. So then I went out to Chicago for just about a year, maybe 10, 11 months. And
this is full time. You're
this
like
was
just
this was
grinding.
great.
Yeah.
It was great because it was like 7 or 8 shows a week.
Yeah.
Play was well received. I had a great part. It was great being directed by Joe Mantegna. Worked with Dennis Farina, George Wendt, all these great people were Chicago actors. I had a great time. Mom and I were just still dating then, but I was able to save enough money to get an engagement ring. So when I came back, we got engaged. And when I was engaged, then I was back meatpacking. Got some other acting gigs.
What did Mom think about this?
About what?
When you were engaged, like going back to the meatpacking?
I mean, Mom was a trooper. She was out of college. She was
nursing at this time.
She was working as a nurse
Yeah.
at the time in Philadelphia. So she was the best. I mean, so engaged and then back meatpacking. The play I got you asked about a crossroads when I knew I wanted to get married and hope we were going to have a family and all that kind of stuff. And I got the gig at the public theater, and I was backstage about to go on, and I remember thinking, I'm done.
Yeah.
I want to have more control over my life. I mean, it was a great experience. I liked the people for the most part. And
was it a money thing at all?
no, it wasn't.
Like stability?
I didn't look at it. I didn't look like that. I just thought to myself, I want to have a little more control over my life, But
Not
I was
at
very
the mercy of agents and
and I was torn because I felt that I'd be quitting and I'd be leaving something I was very passionate about and cared about. I was a member of the Actors Studio.
Yeah.
I got invited to be a member there. I worked there on what I felt was very meaningful stuff, and. Anyway, so yeah, I left all that out. I mean, there were some great mentors I had from the Actors Studio, Vivian Nathan, other people that were just great to me and really helped me develop what I really believed in what I wanted to do. It wasn't like I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be like a bricklayer. I wanted to be good at what I did.
Yeah.
And the Actors Studio was a big part of that. And that followed on after that Williamstown Theater Festival when Joanne Woodward directed Golden Boy, and I had a part in that. And she kind of arranged it that I could have an audition, and then they asked me to be a member, and you become a lifetime member. So I had a great experience at the Actors Studio. But anyway, flash forward now to when I'm at backstage, and I was like, you know what, I think there's either more. I don't know how to. It's just a feeling I had, and I thought that feeling it was the first time I felt that.
Was it you kind of looking around and seeing other people older than you, maybe still being in a similar spot to where you were at the time?
No, I didn't look at it that way because the people that I mean, there are journeyman actors, and I worked with a bunch of them that were professional actors that were like nobody would know them, but they were professional actors, and they were unbelievably talented. So I would see them work their craft and do their thing, and it was the life that they had embraced. And it wasn't like, oh, I don't want to end up like that. I respected the fact that they, I know how hard the business is. I mean, it is what it is, and there's some amazingly talented people that nobody's ever heard of. But you still have the privilege of sharing with an audience something, connecting with them in a live performance. It's very intimate and everything else, right? And it's also one of the biggest adrenaline rushes you could ever get in your life, being on stage. So anyway, I decided that I wanted to try to do something else, and that's when the seed started. And I went back. We lived in New Rochelle at the time. Kelly, I think, was born.
Yeah.
Kelly, your sister, our daughter, Susie's our daughter, our first kid.
Yeah.
Was born then, about a year after we were married, and I said, I think I'm gonna.
Do you think that was part of it?
Well, look, you have
you have somebody.
I have
to
a
care
responsibility. Yeah. I mean, I always knew that I'd provide for the family. I'd do anything, whatever the work was. I didn't look down on any of that, whatever I had to do. But I thought maybe I could. Maybe there's more I could do. And then that's when I started to think about the DEA, because I love the country. I like the idea of serving, and in my mind at that time, I knew that I wanted a career, at least that the way I looked at it, that it would be intense in the sense that this is my perspective back then, which is naive maybe, like that there would be a certain intensity, maybe even a little danger and adventure, and because I think there's a part of me that was drawn to the adrenaline of acting, and I thought, well, maybe I would enjoy something like that where there are high stakes. It's important work. At least I still believe that and believed that then. So
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's when I started to think, how do I get to that?
So then I imagine you start to put something in motion at some point.
I was 28. I think I got married when I was 28. So I was 28. I was like 28, 29 then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine, would you apply to the DEA?
No, because I didn't have my college degree. So I had to go. I was 30.
Yes.
And that's when
because you dropped out of Villanova.
I dropped out of Villanova. I went to the acting school.
Yeah.
And I was 30. So I went back to Villanova at 30, and that's when we moved in with your Mana and Bada, my parents' house.
Yeah, my grandparents.
While I finished up, worked multiple jobs while doing it, and then knew that the first step was getting my undergraduate degree, and I finished up at Villanova, and then that and I couldn't even apply until I had that.
Okay, and then what's the story where you had to go talk to the priest? Was that at Villanova, or was that like back in high school?
No, that was
where you needed help to graduate or something,
no,
or get into a class.
No. I talked to the.
Or was that in high school?
No, you talking about my interview when I first got accepted to Villanova? Or are you talking about? I went back to the same priest that admitted me.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I went back to Father McGuire and said, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and I think he was a nice, great guy, but I think part of it is like helps their graduation rate. So he was like, okay, yeah, no problem. So anyway.
Okay. All right. So you finally graduate Villanova.
Yeah.
Now was that
probably talking too much about all that?
No, because it's all part of like who you are.
Yeah.
But you graduate at when? It's your 30?
I was 30 years old.
Okay.
And
you apply to the DEA, or
well, there was
hiring?
a hiring freeze. So there was a hiring freeze for a long time. So the way I looked at it was, I thought, well, you know what? I know how it goes with the government. If there's a hiring freeze, it was like over 2-year hiring freeze. I'll apply to law school and work my way through law school, and then if it doesn't work out with becoming a DEA agent, I could be I wanted to be like I would have tried to be a prosecutor.
Okay.
And so that's when I started. I started then at law school at Rutgers Law in Camden, New Jersey. I'm very proud of that school. And but then I got an acting gig right when I started law school on a soap opera. So I switched all my classes to night because we needed the money.
Yeah.
And I would take the train up to New York 3 days a week, but I played like a double on One Life to Live. It was like I had to learn 2 parts, so it was great money. And I would do that, and then I took my classes at night, so I'd go back and forth, and But we needed the money. I mean,
so you're acting during the day, and then you would just study at night, or you would take your classes at night?
No, I'd take my classes and study on the train and everything else. And I just did that. That was probably like
for how long of law school?
I would say
a semester,
3/4 of the first year, probably.
Okay,
I
so
mean, it was
a pretty long time.
Yeah, it was a pretty long time. So which was interesting, but it wasn't a great way to start out law school because it's like your focus, frankly, should be But I needed
the money.
Needed the money.
Yeah. Okay. So you eventually graduate law school.
Yeah, eventually. I don't graduate law school till I'm in DEA.
So how'd you get in?
Okay. So I apply the first time while I'm in law school. They undo the hiring freeze. I apply, and you have to make what's called the BQ, the best qualified list. And I was obsessive. I probably drove the recruiters crazy, calling them all the time. And finally, they got my application, and they said, "Look." I said, "Look, can't you count these were professional acting things." And I'll never forget the person said,
"Honey,"
they
probably don't even get it.
She said, "Honey, this is a law enforcement agency." And I was like, "No, I know that. I know." But I hadn't been through my first year.
Little did she know it would come in handy later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I continued on with law school. I was a 30-year-old intern at the Burlington County Prosecutor's Office in the Sex Crimes Unit. Then I worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office as an intern. I bartended at night. It was a great time in a lot of ways. Mom got pregnant with you, which of course my parents were like, "Yeah, great idea. You're living at home."
I'm 26, and I would tell you that's just so stupid. Like,
well, you know what? Mom's a trooper, and we figured it would work out. So
Because your life's in flux at this point. You're working like 8 jobs.
I didn't think it
just
was
trying
in flux.
to get
I thought
by.
I knew we'd get where we had to get. But so anyway, so I applied. I continued through law school, and I was into my second year. So I got rejected the first time I applied to DEA.
Okay.
And as soon as I was, I think, done my second year of law school, and I had all those other things that I did, I applied again. And I got into I made, the BQ, and then I started the process. And then that was like a whole year process. So I was
a whole year leading up to you just like getting into training, is that started?
No, just getting into training probably, because
Okay.
it's like, the background, they give you a conditional offer, but with the conditional offer, you accept it, and pending successful completion of the polygraph and the physical tests and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So at least you're in the mix. But I got that offer when I was working at the U.S. Attorney's Office as an intern. It was a paid internship. It was a great experience in Delaware. And I remember one of the attorneys, again, I was like not the traditional intern. I was like 32 or whatever, and with 2 kids now, and young kids. And they were like, you sure want to do that? But I knew I had to take it, because I knew it was $54,000 a year. And I figured I'll finish law school later, but this is what I wanted to get. So I accepted the offer, and then it started getting ready for the academy, and then went to the academy in 1997, February of 1997. So I was.
So when did you graduate?
Well, I was
law
34.
school?
I was 34 when I went. So remember, I'm going through law school, working these different jobs from 30 to 34. It was like a lot of just different things.
Okay. And then when do you graduate law school?
So I start out. I go to the academy. I graduate the academy in June of '97. Remember, Sean's pregnant while I'm at the academy.
No, mom's pregnant with Sean. Yes.
Mom's pregnant with Sean at the academy, and then he's born while I'm at the academy. But I got home to see him be born.
Yeah.
And then I went back, finished up the academy. June, he was like a little baby. I graduated. Remember, so I graduated. And then I started out in Philadelphia, is where I hired out of, but my first post of duty was New York City. So law school, all I wanted to do was work and be, and prove myself and do whatever. So eventually, about a year or so in, maybe even 2 years in, 2 to 3 years in, while I had a heavy caseload, I said, let me chip away, and I had like 3 classes to go.
You just loved picking good time.
Well, no, but I figured I might as well finish it up. So I did. I ended up finishing up, and I was already on the job with DEA when I got my law degree. So I got my law degree really not till 2000 is when I got it. So
I was 5 at that point.
Yeah. But it wasn't because I was going to practice law. I just figured I might as well finish when I started. I paid all this money for the school.
Yeah.
And, and mom's frugal,
Seriously. She probably forced that hand on you.
Mom didn't. Mom is the absolute best. you know that.
Yeah. All right. So you're out of law school. You're hired on successfully. So you're like actual stable income. You don't have to worry about working 12 jobs.
Health
you
insurance.
have a check every 2 weeks or every month, whatever it is.
401k.
Yeah, 401k. So you're contributing to that, and you start to, I guess you're just like a little street grunt.
Well, no, look, your term is a special agent, but I was blessed to go into a group with some of the best agents.
Is this with Jamie as your boss?
Well, he ran the group. He wasn't officially the supervisor, but he was the senior guy. But yeah. Rob Brizzolari, Jimmy Conley. I worked with Eric Stangby. I worked with an unbelievable. I got dropped into a group where I was older and I was definitely going to work hard, but I couldn't have been put in a group with better people. Yeah. And with more unbelievable experience, and they were good to me, and they really formed my outlook on how I was going to do it. And a lot of the later success I had with DEA, I think, really grew from them and the way in which they go after the biggest and the best targets, the worst targets. Use your imagination. The sky's the limit.
Okay, so that's a good segue into my next point. So. You just said go after.
Am I talking too fast? Am I talking
No, you're not. You said go after the biggest and the best, and I think if I look back on kind of like my younger years, you were always just like, if you're gonna do something, just do it, like go all in and try to be the best at it, because there's like really no point in doing something and not trying to be the best, and you're never always gonna be the best, but for you specifically, you eventually moved to a group that I'll let you talk about because I don't really understand how it worked. But it ended up we needed to move away from Pennsylvania, and I was 8 at the time or something, pretty young.
Well, that was in 2002, so you were born
7.
in 95.
I was 7.
You were 7, yeah.
Yeah. So it ends up, Dad comes home. I think it was very close to Christmas. We have to move, and it's pretty quick move, and it's like right around Christmas. I don't think we didn't even have a Christmas tree. We had a really small Christmas tree. I remember crying about it because that's how I am.
I think we moved Christmas Day or the day after Christmas.
Yeah. And now we're in Virginia, and you're starting a new role, which is a more important.
Well, no,
role.
It's not more important. So I have to say, the cases that were worked in New York were like some of the. Not that I did. I mean, I was involved in a lot of great cases, but fun cases. But the cases that the group that I went into were doing, Italian organized crime, they were super high level and important work. And that's where I developed a relationship, and we developed a relationship with the Southern District of New York and the prosecutors there, who I think are some of the best prosecutors in the world. So, and those relationships continued through that transition. So I wouldn't say the mission for the next thing, and I'll talk about, was different. But it was really applying the same ideas. And it wasn't necessarily, I want to be the best. What drove me was, one, I believed in what we were doing. And number two, I wanted to be challenged by, and this is not unique to me. I mean, any of the good agents, I think, you kind of, you live for the hunt and you want to go against a super worthy adversary. You're not interested in like lower level people. I mean, that's like something you're
street
interested.
Corner people.
Yeah, but look, if there's violence involved, certainly. But in New York, there's so many different targets. The work that's done in New York to this day is like unbelievable work. I mean, it's just a target-rich environment. It's a tough environment to work in, and that was a formative experience for me as an agent. And then I had a lot of the guys that I came in with had moved on, and they were advocates for me and good to me throughout my whole career. And a new program was being developed. It was called the Bilateral Investigations Group or Unit. Eventually became Unit because it expanded. And what they wanted to do was they wanted a dedicated group and other divisions. DEA has offices all over the world, one of the largest federal law enforcement presence outside the country, but then also all over the country in the U.S. and you have international investigations that are done, but they wanted a group that would be dedicated only to focusing on like what were described as untouchables at that time. This was the end of 2002, based in Central and South America, where they'd be involved in all sorts of really serious bad stuff, but like they were also sending tonnage and tonnage and tonnage
to
the
names
US.
of like people,
Well, it's like a lot of the people that were talked about on Narcos and everything else. A lot of those targets are well known to DEA, but there are others too. And the whole idea was to go after them, and the mission of that group, and it grew geographically, and I grew expanded it with the program, was, if I can remember what it was like identify, infiltrate, indict, capture, and convict some of the world's most significant transnational criminals. At that time, it was focused in Central and South America, and that's where we focused initially, and then we led to a investigation into the Norte Valle cartel, but there are so many other great cases that were being done there in that group, but then also with other offices around the country and around the world within DEA.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was that program, but then it eventually expanded.
So now you're like when I said earlier you wanted to go after like the best, I didn't mean that like the stuff being done on the street is lesser of what you were doing. The people you're going at were the people supplying the people supplying the people supplying the people on the street.
Yeah, well,
like, these are now the heads of the operation.
Well, that's the goal, but that's like, I mean, look, I'm not unique in that. Most agents or most investigators, most detectives, they want to go after
I know. And it's a political answer out of you, but you were given the opportunity to identify these people and have to go into these massive networks of super dangerous criminal organizations, like
Well,
killers.
Well, look, I mean, so yeah, I mean, so they were real bad. They were real bad transnational criminals from any part of the world. And eventually, we started working in Africa and Asia and everything else. But yeah, we wanted to focus on them. And it's not a political answer to say it wasn't just me. It was like a group of people, and it was our partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office that gave us
And the foreign
and the foreign
nationals,
counterparts
yeah.
who you've seen. They've been over our
yeah,
houses.
great people.
Yeah. So.
But so you now your target switches from just kind of crime happening in New York that you were working to. You have to figure out how you're going to essentially infiltrate, indict and arrest these people who have been on lists, I would imagine, that the U.S. has been after them for a long time. So how do you even approach something like that where maybe multiple government agencies haven't been able to get these people indicted and arrested in the U.S. for 20,
Right.
30 plus years that they've been in operation?
Yeah. So look, I mean, so to be clear, New York worked international cases too. It wasn't just like they didn't just work local cases.
Yes, I know,
Yeah.
but
Um, so it's there's no special sauce. It's really you have a lot of people working to identify through human sources and through other means who the biggest targets are, and generally you might know about them. You might know who they are. You might see how they're related. You might not have a complete picture, but they're usually very violent, sophisticated.
they need money.
Insular networks that rely on money laundering, fake documents. They're moving loads, transportation, aviation, maritime, all that kind of stuff. And then, but the principles that you apply are really no different from what we did in New York, or in a, let's say you would call it a more straightforward case.
Yeah.
You try to develop somebody who's on the inside. If you can introduce a DEA undercover, you do. You try to infiltrate them with all legal, judicial, methods, whether it's wiretaps or whatever it is, and collect evidence. You make controlled purchases. You do all that kind of stuff, and then you work with your prosecutorial partners. Now, I personally worked with SDNY almost exclusively, but a lot of people worked with special narcotics in New York, other districts, Southern District of Florida, Eastern District of New York. You work with your prosecutorial partner, and then there's a certain level of parity in that relationship, and you figure out how can you go and get these. How can you work this out? If they're in a foreign country, are there extraditions from that country? If there isn't, can you with approval lure them to a country where they will be extradited? I mean, there's all sorts of things. I'm not going to get into all sources and methods, but that was the goal. That was the goal, and then we expanded into. It was obviously it wasn't that long after 9/11, and they stood up at the Special Operations Division, our Counter Narcoterrorism Operations Center, because there was obviously a confluence of support by the Taliban and traffickers in Afghanistan and elsewhere. So then we started working on that targets in that part of the world, and then also working West Africa. Spent a lot of time in West Africa, opened up that, working with a lot of great agents like Wim Brown, Sam Gay, Eric Stouch, all those guys. So
yeah, all people that I've met.
Yeah,
that have been over
and are great
and,
people.
Yeah,
I mean, and Carol Dillon, and terrific. Christine Hanley. I could go on the whole list. I don't want to
No, I know.
not that they'll see this, because I don't know if they follow you on TikTok.
No, I doubt it. But do you want to get into any of your most fun cases or no?
I mean, you can ask me. You can ask me
you.
questions, but I don't want to free form talk about it, because number one, it's I think kind of it sounds self-aggrandizing, and number two,
Well, I just worry about the sensitive nature.
no,
of
I won't give up anything sensitive. The only thing I would talk about are public things. But you can ask me some questions, but again, I don't feel compelled unless
Yeah, I know you don't like talking about yourself, but this is a podcast, and you're the guest.
No, well,
no one wants to hear me talk.
Well, there's other stuff. I mean, look, you can ask some questions, and
Okay, no,
I won't answer them.
Well, I want to just so you have your career at DEA then, and that eventually comes to an end because there is a mandatory retirement in the DEA.
Yeah, it's at 57, but
you didn't take.
I didn't take that. I
Yeah.
left at 54 after a little over 20 years.
Okay,
so, yeah.
and then you don't retire naturally. You just keep working, and you end up as a consultant is what I consider you.
Yeah,
now.
I guess that's right. Yeah.
And so you kind of just do everything. When people ask what you do, I kind of just say he solves problems, because people or corporations will come to you with problems, and it's kind of just up to you to figure out how to fix them. Or
yeah, I mean, there's different things. So so anyway, I spent that time in that program. It was at our Special Operations Division, and had great leaders at DEA at the time, and had a lot of support, and worked in a lot of interesting things against arms traffickers, other narco terrorists, and did stuff in crazy stuff in Guinea-Bissau. Like a lot of interesting things. And then the Chuck Rosenberg came in as acting administrator, and eventually I had the privilege of he asked me to lead the diversion control division, which was not something that I had been involved in. There's a whole regulatory side of DEA in the controlled substances space. So for the last 2 years,
you went in blind.
Well, I wouldn't say I went blind. I mean, I had some idea, but I obviously, I wasn't a career diversion investigator, and I was blessed with like really great people that were around me, Demetra Ashley, others, and that was a real privilege, because it was a massive program. I mean, it's like 1,700 people between the field and headquarters, and a big budget, and interaction, testifying on the Hill and learning. It was obviously, at the height of the opioid epidemic. My predecessor, Joe Ranazizi, had been in the program for years. He had done some amazing work, I think, within DEA. And, so I didn't,
I just
I don't
remember
wanna be
you
one-
spending a lot of time studying
Reading,
what
yeah,
this stuff
yeah.
was.
You'll sometimes find in anything how, somebody hits the home run, but they were like, I forget how it goes, but you really started out on third base,
Yeah.
and somebody bunts, and you're like, a squeeze play home or whatever it is, the baseball. I'm not like, I don't know the exact analogy, but sometimes you don't realize you start out on third base, and sometimes people think they actually hit the triple.
Yeah.
Some of my first informants were given to me.
Hmm.
Rob Rizzoleri gave me one, and ended up leading into a big case. Jamie, my predecessor, Ranazizi, he described the program. We're very different people. This is when I was in the diversion control division. Very different people and different leadership styles, but you don't do any of this. You don't do any of it alone.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it's kind of just like life, right?
It is like life.
You don't pick your parents. Some are obviously better than others, and that whole thing.
Right,
so
anyway.
So you leave. You're now to this day. You are
I'm with
quote unquote a consultant.
Yeah. Well, I guess I am.
You're a consultant
with Guidepost Solutions. Is a great firm, and they have two practice areas: security, technology consulting, and then monitoring, compliance, and investigations. And I'm on that side.
Yeah.
And whether it's pharma regulatory stuff, or it's investigations for high net worth individuals, or corporate stuff internationally. It's a great group of people, a lot of former prosecutors, former federal agents, but nobody really probably wants to hear about that. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, it goes back to just relationships in general. You work very closely with a lot of people you worked with.
Yes. Yeah.
When you were on the job and with the government.
Yeah,
like
a lot
Jamie and all of them.
Yeah,
you still work with because they do good work.
Well, but the other thing is, a lot of the attorneys that I dealt with at SDNY and EDNY, but primarily SDNY, they're now in private practice, and I've known them for 25 years, and we get to work together on things, or they all have something and they'll pull us into. So
yeah, well, it just kind of goes back to you are your brand, and if you go back to your stories about meatpacking, you want it to be so irreplaceable that you could have your job back after you came back from acting, right?
Well, I wasn't irreplaceable. I mean, you could replace me.
No,
in that
you
job.
can replace.
I wanted
but
to
they
be
knew.
valued.
Yes, they
to be
knew
valued.
your work ethic, and they knew what you brought. If you were going to be on the floor doing what they needed you to do, meatpacking. So it was a similar concept when you retire and you're now a consultant. Now you eat, proverbially eat what you kill, and you have to bring in your own work. You now have lawyers who are private practice that you worked with back when you were both public people, and they can bring you work. And so it's just like it feeds off each other, but it all goes back to, can they trust you to do good work? And that seed was set a long time ago.
Yeah, well, we have a history. Yeah, we have a history and a shared experience, and I think that makes for a fruitful anything if we entered into any kind of a business relationship together. So, and I'm fortunate where I am with the freedom that I'm given and good people that I work with. So
yeah, okay. Well, I mean, that brings you up to speed on his
So that's it?
background.
We
I
done?
know that was painful for you to talk about yourself for that long. I think that's the longest I've ever heard him talk about himself. But so I did.
I want to talk about Mom because like I couldn't have done any of this without Mom.
Do you want to talk about mom?
I'll do whatever.
Do you want to talk
your
about the
show.
time? Okay, you want to talk about the time and she wrote you $75 check because you weren't eating anything but peanut butter and you were dead broke?
Yeah. When I was living at the YMCA, she did. She felt sorry for me, and
Which, if you know my mom's, like us kids can't get money out of my mom. So for him to get
that's not true.
for him to get $75 out of her is pretty incredible.
That's not true. I mean, so yeah, no, Mom was great. No, but anyway.
So I solicited questions from the people that watch the podcast, people from Instagram, people from TikTok, and
What about you? Didn't come up with any of your own questions?
No, I do have some of my own questions, but I also know you and they don't. So
Right.
I'm gonna run through some of theirs first. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say kind of who it's from after I read the question. What advice would you give your high school self? This is from Gar01062. High school. So this is going way back.
Yeah. There was I mentioned earlier a mentor I had. She was a great actress, Vivian Nathan. She's passed. And she was a member of the group theater and then the actor studio. And she was a real mentor to me. And I remember when I told her I wanted to leave acting, and she said, "Eat the food that life gives you."
Mm.
And, it really resonated with me. So I almost wish that I had someone like that tell me that, like, take it easy.
You don't have to do everything at once?
Well,
kind of, or no?
it's don't be impatient. It's going to fall. It's going to take a path that will be it will be wonderfully rich. You don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but go on the journey, enjoy the journey. And I did enjoy the journey, but not as much when you want it all so fast and so right away, and you get so impatient that you just want to put your fist through a wall.
And you're like, were you
especially in
thinking
high
about
school.
the next thing?
Yeah, I
'Cause that's
didn't like
me.
school.
That's me.
I didn't like school that much. I wasn't a very good student. I was thinking about other things and in high school, and then I had other things that kind of interested me. But I wish I would just say, eat the food that life gives you. Enjoy this, and everything will work out in time.
So kind of just enjoy the moment more.
Yeah, enjoy the
as
moment,
it's
enjoy the
happening.
process a little bit, and keep the perspective on it, and just have some patience.
I think I could learn from that one.
I've told you that before, though.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay. This is from Jake and Kids. Quick backstory on Jake. I actually met him talking about trading like stocks, options, derivatives. So he is raising 2 sons currently, and he wants to know kind of just general advice on raising sons because it looks like you did a good job.
Well, it's raising kids, right? I'm not, because whether it's sons and Kelly is your sister. I mean, it's there's no book on it, and I don't have any sage advice other than, what would I say? Like if I ever had grandkids,
I think you do need to think about this and talk about it more because I know you don't like to give your mom and yourself a ton of credit, but even, Sean and I have both in separate occasions asked you and mom, like, how did you do so well? Because me growing up, like I see the different paths kids take that I'm growing up with, and there is that nature versus nurture type thing, but I think you and mom did an extremely good job, and it's something I would like to replicate, when I'm a parent someday. So there's something there.
Well, thank you. I mean, thanks for saying that. I guess, I think I've told you this before, and all of you, Kelly and Sean, I've said, I had great parents. They had flaws like I have flaws.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there were things that my dad did, and although I knew he loved me so much, and my mom too, that I thought, I don't want to do that. So, and I've said to you all that, like, look, the hope is there are good things that you take away from us and how we raised you, but there are going to be things that you're going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to worry about this or that, or I'm not going to harp on this, or I'm not going to be so overbearing about this. So I guess I would say it's kind of the same thing as the high school thing. The advice to yourself in high school, just, you know, I'll give you the. This is kind of a tough thing for me to articulate because I can't really say it like I have
Any one thing,
like real perspective, other than just to be patient and it will work out, and don't sweat the little things. But I remember, this is just an example with your grandfather, with Mom's father, a grandpa, who was a professional athlete and a high level coach in college and the pros and everything else. And when you were wrestling, and I had this idea as a dad with all three of you, like you start something, you finish it. Like these ideas, which are
never quit, was written on a rock that you gave to Kelly.
Yeah, but which is not a bad thing necessarily.
No, I agree.
But there was something about the noise or whatever, you didn't like it, you wanted out, and you were like asking to get out of it, like really emotionally. And I remember talking to him, and I'm like, he goes, give him a way out. And I didn't expect that, but this was his a perspective of someone who was in his 70s probably at the time. And I think
he was a professional coach. Like this is a guy that coached Harvard football for 20 plus years.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I would say, don't worry about the little things, and just be there for them, and don't coddle them. I mean, like there's all the different things. It's there's no book on how to do it, and you just it's like having a cup of milk. Milk is good. Well, some people say dairy is not good for you, but let's say milk is good for you. And it's
anymore.
It's like here's a cup of milk, and then you spill it on them. Your intention is to do something good, but you then stumble on the execution. I mean, I did that a number of times, and I think it's impossible not to as a parent, because you don't know exactly how it's going to go together. And the other thing is, you have an idea of what your kids are going. You have this idea of your kids, right? You just have this idea. Well, you have this dream or this aspiration for them, and that's, you got to always remember that they're going to be their own individuals. They're going to develop their own preferences. They're going to grow up in whatever way they're going to grow up. And I wish in a way that I'd been more aware of that. Like I think as if any of you have kids, I would be like, don't worry about it. Let them do what they're going to do. It's going to be fine. Yeah. And you'll probably all get mad at me because you'll be like, oh, Dad, you were, we had to do it this way, or you were overbearing or whatever. So, I mean, I was imperfect. I mean, we're all fallible. So anyway, so I don't know if that's a good answer. It's an answer. I don't know.
I'm sure. I mean, he is he's
going to find his way.
He's a parent, so he will probably relate to that more than people that don't have kids. But I'm sure something.
Yeah. Do the best you can. Do the best you can, and don't be afraid to. Everyone's gonna mess up, and you're gonna think you're gonna play the tapes back. Like you're gonna lay in bed at night and say, I could have handled that a little bit better. But it's better to be self-aware like that, not to a negative extent where you're beating yourself up, which it can happen. But where you're thinking, I could have done that. And then you go back to them, especially when they're like, hey, I love you. I could have handled that differently. Sorry I got so upset, or whatever it is. Or, hey, you want to do whatever you want to do? No problem.
Yeah. I think it's tough. It's got to be tough for a parent to admit, either they made a mistake or there was a fault there. But I remember, like, even when we were younger, and specifically me, when I was going through puberty and I had so much like just anger and we would get into fights, I always knew that you would, like, regardless of how bad the fight was, you were going to come to me at some point and not necessarily apologize, because it was majority of the time I was in the wrong, but you were just going to be like, let me know, I'm over it. And it's the same way Sean and I were when we had fought. We'd get over it relatively quickly, and never stuck.
My dad used to do that. Like, so my dad and I would have arguments at times, and I think that's a normal thing with all children, regardless of gender. But sometimes sometimes it seems more intense. Sometimes with fathers and sons.
Yeah.
But my dad would always do that, and he'd write me notes, or we'd talk, and you always want to. You want to, when cooler things calm down, it's nice to go back and revisit. Not necessarily relive the whole thing, or like, Mom's good this way, where she's like, don't go and dwell on it. She's a good balance. like that. But I think it's also good to say, look, we got mad at each other. It was the heat of the moment. I don't mean like violent like that. I just mean in like intensity or like, not a pleasant interaction or anything like that. And then try to talk through what the issues are or whatever it is. So,
Okay.
anyway.
I'm sure he'll get something out of that. Somebody
we'll
will.
see. I don't know.
All right. Things that kept you motivated in different stages of your life. This is from Clay Woods. And then this is a good one because you have so many different stages. Kind of, we just touched on a bunch of different stages of your life, but there has to be something there that's motivating you to either keep going or like something. Obviously, your kids will probably be one of them for a certain stage of your life, probably when you were in the DEA, or making that transition. But I'll let you
Motivation. So, I always I always knew that I wanted to have a family, and obviously I was lucky to meet your mom, and we got married, and it's been a great journey. And it was a journey of like a lot of different things. I don't know any. She stuck with me through all those different twists and turns, with the different careers and everything else, and was always great. So I always knew I wanted to have a family, and that was always the thing that was the most important to me, the family. So it wasn't like I had other real hobbies or other things that I did, but I like work. Excuse me. And I liked the acting. I liked trying to outreach, my grasp. Sorry. That city bike ride over here. Outreach my grasp.
Yeah.
And the acting was certainly a challenge. And that was great because I loved to be able to try to understand other people and walk in their shoes and give some insight and marry up what maybe they were going through in the character with, either experiences or emotions that I had. And then with the DEA, I had look, it's not all sunshine and rainbows because you're taking someone's freedom away, and that's not an easy thing. Or there's danger, and there certainly were times. But as far as working with a group of people and working on something, it was it was a great experience. So it didn't feel like work. There were times when there are things that are more tedious, but I loved what I did, and I worked with great people, and you hopefully attract and get close to people that you really like to work with. And so
would you say like the fact that there were people that told you couldn't was a motivating factor at all? Like
that's
the
always
will
been
to prove people
I
wrong?
mean, even with DEA, there were times when you deal with, whatever, and someone would say, not necessarily within DEA, they'd say, there's no way you're going to get this guy. This guy's untouchable. You're not going to be able to get him. And then you don't say anything.
And then you get him.
Well, no, but you don't say anything. But you just go back. You get with your core group and you figure out, okay, how can we do this? Let's put our nose to the grindstone. It was the same thing with the acting. When that woman said, who was very nice, she's like, oh, forget it. She was being nice to say that there'd be a lot of rejection, and there's a tremendous amount of rejection, obviously.
Yeah.
In fact, you're getting rejected all the time, and you can take it very personally. But the fact that it was like, no, you can't do this, that's definitely a driving thing. There's a certain stubbornness and a certain willfulness that I think is a positive thing, and something that with all three of you, you're all willful in your own way, and you actually, it's tough. One thing, going back to that earlier question, if you have a willful child, it's tough when they're young, but you want them to be willful, as long as that can be shaped in the right way, because the world and life is going to be, there are going to be a lot of twists and turns, and as Robert Frost says, two roads diverge in a wood, You've got to make these choices, and you want them to be willful enough that no matter what it is, and they see that the mob is going in a certain way, that they're not afraid to stand up and say, time out, that's wrong, or I'm not going to go that way. So when it's a nascent, like undeveloped, raw willfulness, it can be really hard as a parent because it's like so, you're like, but you want that. And that is something that was not always easy to accept, but it was something now Mom and I, you're all three very different, but you're all willful in different ways. And, I think it's been challenged for the most part, be good, but it can also become destructive, so you have to challenge it. So that would, going back to that earlier question, that's something that if you find willfulness in your children, it's not a bad thing if you can channel it to do good and to do the right thing and to encounter obstacles, maintain your character, uphold your values, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. How did you / how to form meaningful relationships in both business and personal life? This was asked by Konstantin Zirkelbach.
I don't know.
For me, I'll give my insight on like this. To me, I never really seek out people, I would say. I don't like see people and be like, oh, I want to be their friend or whatever. Or if I'm put into a new situation, like a new job, or say I got to school and I was playing sports, it was always just, I'm going to do my work. I'm going to do it extremely well. And I'm going to make sure I'm one of the hardest working people there. And then everything else will fall into place. Like your crew or your pack of people will usually find you. Like group of like-minded people will find you if you go about it that way.
Yeah,
But
so
obviously it could be different for you.
no, it's not. It's not actually. So it's and it reminds me again. I've been blessed in my life with really important relationships. My parents, your mom, my in-laws, mom's dad and mom, who I loved tremendously. Unfortunately, they're all passed. But when I was going to the academy, so Grandpa knew me when I was an actor and I was a meat packer and doing all that stuff. But when I was going to the academy, one thing that a lot of people didn't know about Grandpa was he was a member of the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, and like the precursor to the CIA, because he spoke Slavic languages.
And those people are like,
no, they were like,
crazy.
no, they did, behind enemy lines and
Yeah.
World War II and everything else. And he never really spoke about that stuff. He may have with your Uncle Joey and everything else. But we talked a little bit as I was getting involved in more and more sensitive things outside the country. But when I was going to the academy, he said to me, you just do your thing and it'll become clear. You don't have to force anything. You'll gel with the people that you gel with. If you see someone that's like, you just don't. It kind of happens organically. So, I've been fortunate now in the private sector where a lot of the people are people that I've had, like there's a history. I've been in situations with them when they were with the government and I was with the government and everything else, and there's a shared history. So I'm probably not the best at developing new relationships and all things like the best relationships that I developed was working on a common mission. And this was one thing I wanted Kelly to get when she worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office as a paralegal, and Sean or you, wherever you're going to do. It's great to work toward a common goal with a lot of people in a really intense pressure cooker environment, because you see very quickly who you can rely on, who you can't rely on, and you develop a bond with those people because of the twists and turns. You see the ones that melt down when everything falls to crap, which is inevitable. So the best relationships, even with the foreign counterparts that I worked with, it was because we were working on things together, and that's how we became close. And the same thing now, if in the private sector, if there's something, even a new attorney I'm working with or a new client, you're working toward a common goal. You develop a relationship going on that journey, and that's how I like to develop those relationships. I've got close friends, and you know who they are. I'm fine with that, and obviously the family, you and the kids are the most important things to me. I don't need to seek out the other. If it happens, it happens. Great.
I think in finding people that way, at least in my experience, and I haven't been doing it as long as you, but just I think I have the ability to sniff out kind of who is a phony or like acting like they're a certain way versus like the talk about it versus be about it people. Like it's very easy to figure out who those people are quickly after you after you go about finding closer people to you in that way of just they'll find me.
Yeah, I mean, people will reveal themselves in the interactions and everything else. But one thing that I would tell my younger self is to not jump to conclusions sometimes. And I know, my instinct I think is okay.
It's good.
And but I also sometimes I think I got this figured out and I'm wrong. And I have to be honest with myself about that sometimes. And I say, I was completely wrong about that person. There was an agent that, the way he came across to me, I was like, you got to be kidding me. And he ended up being like an unbelievable guy. Oh, great, But that was my bias in a sense of that, and I have those shortcomings also. So I would tell my younger self. I think it's Arabic because it was an Arabic source we had. He used to say shvei shvei, and it's like
hopefully that means something.
No, I know it does.
Please.
It's like calm. Okay. Take it easy.
Yeah. Okay. What was your biggest fear when raising children? And this was asked by Alexis Soriano.
that we would fall short as parents. I mean, that was, it was very important to Mom and myself that we would do everything we could. We try to do the best that we could and be there for you all. And that's it. I think that would be it. Like, I think that and, having bad relationships, with you all or whatever, even though there's always like turmoil, different points in.
No, we're
in
all
your lives.
extremely close. Like I look at some of my
very
friends
close.
and they don't have relationships with their parents or their other
Yeah.
siblings, and we're like we all just like chill.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty-
I guess that we didn't serve you well. That would be the fear. That I think that's what Mom would say too if you spoke to her, if you asked her.
I've asked her that before, I think on video, and she
Mhm.
said the same thing.
Yeah.
Like she just wanted the best for us.
Yeah, she
and
wanted you to be happy too.
Yeah, yeah.
And happiness is being with the family makes me happy, and a lot of things are challenging work stuff makes me happy. Happiness is a very kind of hard to define thing sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Did you ever have doubt? Now, I have to preface this one because, and I'll read it, but I want to answer before you answer.
Before I answer?
Yeah. It says, did you ever have doubts about Marcus becoming as successful as he is? And I want to preface this by saying I don't consider myself successful at this stage in my life. Like, I am working on a lot of different things, but I don't even consider myself remotely successful. Like, for me, I look at my dad, I look at people, and I look at people that have much more success than me, generally older, and it's always just, can I get there faster? And so I don't think I'll ever really consider myself successful. I don't know if that feeling will ever come, regardless of, monetary value, like in my bank account or what I'm worth or that type of thing. But I just wanted to say, I don't think I am that successful.
Well, the question is, I mean, they're obviously it's a nice thing for them.
No,
to
I do
ask,
agree
right?
that, yeah,
it's nice
yeah.
for them to frame it that way. I understand what you mean because you don't, you never really want to feel that you've arrived.
Yes.
You always want to maintain, even, and I saw this in DEA. People make a big case, and then they feel that they've arrived, and it's the ones, and some of them that I've worked with that have never stopped chasing and trying to outreach their grasp that really demonstrate greatness. So, but I would say that it depends on how you define success. I mean, I think you can have a sense of accomplishment, and that's something I think I would tell my younger self. Like, accept the fact that you've accomplished this or this, and be internally, not necessarily outwardly. You don't have to voice it, but be happy that you've done A, B, or C. So I guess it depends on how you define success. And I've said this before. If you define it with a bank account, that's very, that's fine. And I know I've heard you say that you want to do good with the money, and that's all great and all that kind of stuff. But it's, success and happiness, they're much deeper things that can bring that. And it depends on how you define success. If the definition of success is being a good father someday, or a good spouse, or a good whatever, or starting your own business, or supporting yourself. I mean, you can define those things and those accomplishments along the way, but there's I think a double-edged sword or a potential trap if you and if you think, well, this is what it's going to be successful.
Yeah.
And we laughed earlier about, we got married. I hadn't finished school. I was working as a meat packer, and Mom got pregnant right after the honeymoon, and I was just like, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And, there was something to be said for saying, well, we probably should have a house first, or we should have this. That's fine, and that works for some people. But, we don't know what's going to happen around the corner anyway.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said with saying, enjoy the journey, and it's never going to be like the perfect time. So it's the same thing with success. Define the goals, achieve the goals, continue to outreach your grasp, and find some rich experience within that journey.
And I think that you being able to look back and realizing that sometimes you do need to celebrate smaller successes, like success, I look at as like successful stops along the way to like whatever might be the bigger goal is, obviously I made a TikTok this week about how much I call like you and Mom, but a lot of the times when I'm talking to my dad or I'm talking to my mom, it's not like complaining. It's just me being frustrated that I'm not further down the road or closer to a goal that I have in my brain, because the way my brain works is like, it's just always thinking about we need to get here, and then we get there, and then we gotta get to the next thing. So I don't even really ever stop to be like, well, we got to what we initially wanted. Like, I don't even stop there to think, oh, that's good. It's right on to the next thing. And there have been times where I've been on the phone with you and you're like, well, you've accomplished X, Y, Z, like all of these things that you have previously talked about wanting to accomplish, but now it's not good enough.
Well, yeah, it is a double-edged sword, and that's something that I can relate to from when I was younger and your age. You want it right away and everything else, but it's not necessarily great for your mental health, and I think it's important to hear it from others to say, look, don't rest. I mean, I'm not expecting you to rest on your laurels or someone to rest on their laurels. There's a danger in that. There's a trap in that. But you have to take account and say, look, I this is what I wanted to achieve. I got to this objective. I want to continue to work. Otherwise, it becomes unhealthy potentially.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to recognize that. I mean, and figure out how you're going to define success. I mean, going back to the acting stuff, I would see sometimes actors, and you work at jobs in between. I never wanted to lose sight of what my objective was, and I would see sometimes, even in the nightclubs, the bartenders or whatever it was, they would start to get caught up in that social circle and you're like, well, they're making good money and everything else. And I would see, at least my perception was, they were losing sight of where they wanted to get.
They get comfortable.
They get, so there's a double-edged sword. You never want to lose sight of what your objectives are. You want to approach it in a I was listening to a Jocko Willink thing, discipline equals freedom. Yeah. You want to have some discipline and, still work to that. But you do want to understand when you've achieved certain milestones. But
yeah, okay. Phil Starnes asks, how does what your dad was doing at your age compare to what you're doing, as in what I'm doing? I'm 26.
So
much.
Am I supposed to comment on that?
Yeah. Like, I guess, how does what you were doing compare to what I'm doing now?
Well, I mean, look, I've said this to all three of you. You're farther along than I was in many ways. You all graduated college. You played sports in college. You are now working. I mean, I would not recommend the circuitous route that I went. I mean,
no, I agree.
Look, I mean, I just wouldn't recommend it. But that being said, in doing something non-traditional, I don't think I ever would have dissuaded any of you from doing something non-traditional. But I was very much like, finish school first, because it wasn't ideal. I mean, like, it worked out great and a blessing. We moved in with my parents. My mom died of cancer at a young age, so Kelly had time with her. You had some time with her, too, and she died at 60. That was 21 years ago. You guys were younger. If we hadn't been in that situation, which I thought was wonderful in a sense, but I felt like a loser.
Because you were 30-something
I was 30,
at the time?
And then there's Mom, and I'm like, oh, my God, But we did it for a few years, and in hindsight, it was fine, and it all worked out great. But I forgot the beginning of the question now.
Just, like what, comparing.
So you all have, I think, and you should appreciate that. And I've said that to you all, a number of times. Yeah. You look at me now, and,
Well, I compare myself to where you're at now, and I'm like, well, I need to get that.
Well, but I mean, what is it?
No, we don't have to have this conversation. We've had this conversation, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, so anyway, but I think chasing dreams and everything is really important, as long as they're grounded in some reality, in the sense of they can be as lofty a dream as whatever. So I know that you're pursuing certain things while you're working and everything else. I know Kelly's involved in certain things, Sean's involved in certain things. Chasing any dream is worthwhile, no matter what it is. And I think because I went through and was allowed to do it by my parents to go after the acting. Some people would have said, forget it. You're not doing that. But they supported me and I did it, and found that way. So
you've always supported us doing it. It's just we've had to have a plan.
Yeah.
It can't just be like I want to start this business and this is what I want to do. Like, it was, okay, well, how are you going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, so anyway, yeah.
What What's one piece of this was kind of ties into stuff we've talked about, but Nicholas Parton asks, "What's one piece of advice you've given your children that everybody should hear?" And I can answer that from my own personal experience. And I think my brother and sister would probably say the same thing because I think it's
So then
something
you can answer it.
it's something my sister has tattooed on her, but my brother and I don't have tattoos, and it's something we probably would tattoo if we were going to go that route. And there was this rock that my dad gave my sister. I don't know when the rock made it into our family, and I'm pretty sure my sister still has it. There's no way she threw it out. It might be still in her room at your house, but it says "never, never quit" on it. And there's been a lot of times in my life where I've thought back to that rock, especially like playing sports in college and how much I hated my life, kind of junior, senior year of college, and like the just the toxicity that went on in my brain. But I always thought about that and the fact that, it was like at the time, like junior year of college, was like, 2 more years, just get this shit over with and be done. And it was just like, but don't quit. And I know I quit wrestling. We talked
you were
about
little.
that. Yeah, we talked about that when I was young, when I was much younger. But I think never, never quit would be the lesson.
Well,
but
I have a little different perspective on that. Like yes, I mean, in the sense of, no matter how bad things are going or whatever, I guess now you would say don't tap out or whatever. But I technically quit acting, and I had a really hard time with that because it was like all I thought about and all I cared about, other than mom at the time, and I like that rock. I think it symbolizes more that there's always farther that you can go in the discomfort, in the challenges that you're seeing. It's always can get worse, and there's always somebody that's got to, worse off. So you can go further than you think you can. But sometimes in your life, I mean, there's a negative connotation of quitting, but sometimes you have to transition, or you will say,
pivot.
I'm going to make it pivot. I'm going to make a decision to do this. And it's not necessarily that you're a failure or whatever. You're deciding, I'm going to do this for these reasons. And as that mentor said to me, Vivian, eat the food that life gives you at that time, and things always work out. So.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with.
But I don't know if that's the best advice that I ever gave you. I mean, maybe mom would know something. I mean, I can't think of anything.
You've given
you
us
guys,
a lot of advice. It's tough to put it like one single thing. Like, I've been here for 26 years. Like, there's been a lot of stuff. This one's asked by Jacob Ostos. Do you feel accomplished in your life?
I don't think I can. I don't know if I can answer. It's a good question. I mean, I appreciate the question. I don't know if I would say I feel accomplished. I feel like I've been involved in some really special things, especially when I was with. I mean, some of the things when I was acting were great. But I'll talk about the most important things. And there were things I was involved in when I was with the DEA that were like, I would pinch myself like, this is an unbelievable experience. I've got to drink every moment of this in because it'll probably never happen again. And then the next thing would be like crazier and wilder. And then I'd be like, wow. So I wouldn't say, I feel funny saying, I've accomplished this or accomplished. Yeah, it's very subjective. I would say you three probably, and my relationship with your mom, is it an accomplishment? I wouldn't put it that way, but that's probably the most meaningful thing in those are the most meaningful, that's the most meaningful part of my life. Yeah.
I'm laughing because there's a running joke in our family that all my dad cares about is the family and my mom. And that's literally it. He could have nothing else and he would be completely happy. Maybe his boat, but completely happy. Let's see. Do you see yourself in me?
I really wonder what people are going to think. They're going to be like, who is this guy? Anyway.
Who is he? I don't know. Yeah. We're trying to figure that out. Joe Vesey asks, do you see yourself in Marcus?
Yeah, sometimes. I see myself in, I see qualities of mom in all of you and myself in all of you. Yeah, you're, especially when you're younger, you're like impatience, your intensity, and your, sometimes your fire. You all three have that. But yeah, I've seen that. Stubbornness.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, stubbornness, sure. But that's more your mom, I think, because mom can be stubborn. I certainly see qualities qualities that, some of the same qualities that I had that took a long time. And I remember I used to tell you and the others that, whenever we'd have an issue with Sean or with Kelly, I would have the same conversation. But I'd say this to you that, when I was 40, and I don't know how old you would have been then, 17 years ago, or whenever you were, that it took me a long time to get my emotions in check.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, it was something that, it took me a long time too, like all through puberty and high school.
Harnessing that energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And figuring out like just how to deal with it. Because once that started, like it's so powerful and it's just like crazy, like this crazy strong, like pull to do certain things, or like, not like motivation, but just energy to do things that, once I did figure out how to focus it, I think is when I actually started accomplishing things in life.
Well, it was good. It was always good when you had physical activity. It was good. But also I think, you got to, that mentor you had who's passed, the priest that exposed you to painting.
Yeah.
That had a big, Mom and I marveled at how that was life gives you that at that right time in your life. And now that's something that you'll keep with you,
Yeah.
So
I agree. This one's how did you choose your career path, but we went through that, so I'm not even gonna touch on it. Anything you regret or wish you did more when you were raising kids? This is asked by Killa Ga.
Yeah, probably like go to the Grand Canyon. Do things like experiential things like that.
I'll say we didn't go on a ton of vacations.
No, we didn't.
In our teenage years, but that wasn't the fault of my parents. It's the kids were doing summer lacrosse, summer volleyball, like all the time. Like there was no time to do vacation really, because it was all toward that next goal of college lacrosse, college volleyball, college lacrosse for Sean. Like it was always toward that. And looking back on it now, you can always take a week or something to go on vacation, but it was partially our fault for.
Yeah, we had the Cape Cod trips and all that kind of stuff, but I guess maybe putting more effort into those kinds of experiences, maybe that would be a regret.
But then again,
sweating small things when I was younger and, thinking, oh, I'm worried about this or overthinking this and being like times if I was overbearing as a dad or whatever. I definitely have those kinds. Some of those things I'll keep personal, but keep to myself. But
But going back to the vacation stuff, it's almost the vacations we go on now, I think are just like I'd rather do them now than do them when we're younger, because our relationships are so much different with everybody in the family. Now we're like, we look forward to going on things because it's just like we're all just doing our thing.
Yeah,
right.
No,
and we're all just so busy in regular life that once we get together and we're all back like together, our relationships were more like just best friends. It's not like parent-children relationships anymore.
Well, look, one of the silver linings in the whole COVID thing, and it, as bad as it was, when you, Sean, and Kelly were all at the dining room table all together, it was like a forced thing. It was great, in that sense, it was great. Everybody was close, I think, at that point. But
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree. This question is from Cam. He says, "What is something that you believe in that I have the opposing view on?" And I think that as I've gotten older and kind of, I'd say toward the end of college and into how old I am now, I do challenge your viewpoints on things a lot more. Like I challenge most of the status quo type things, and I'll do it privately with you, like over text message. I'll see something on the news and I'll challenge it immediately, because usually I'll challenge it if I know you have the opposing view or something like that. But I think just in general, I'll question or I'll challenge most things that are put out there as fact, as blatant fact, like whether you see it on the news or whatever. But I think one thing that I always challenge you on is, and I'll have to explain this a little bit, the fact that a lot of the people making decisions in corporate America or the government or even like the presidency, these people are all extremely old, right? And I know you oppose this view, and I will talk about it because the world is changing extremely fast, and I think it's changing even faster with how ingrained technology is into culture now. That you listen to those Senate hearings, and there are times when the senators are either asleep or they actually don't even know what is being talked about. And that's where I get frustrated. Like, why are there all these old heads making these rules for people when they don't even know what they are doing? But on the same coin, flip side, you bring up very good points of like, and I go to you for this because you have wisdom, right? You're older because you have wisdom and experience, and that is needed. So like there is a certain level of oldness needed in these positions, but you can talk about it too if you want.
So one of your favorite books is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, right?
Yes. Yeah.
He's pretty old.
You're gonna try to dismantle me.
No. I just thought of this just now. But I mean, if he were sitting here right now, he wouldn't know anything about iPhones, technology, the internet. Let me finish.
Okay, fine.
Any of those things, and yet he wrote something that was timeless, and actually you could apply. There are certain timeless things. So I don't disagree that. I think you need a balance, right? You need, well-intentioned youth and people that want to serve the public or whatever it is, or in corporate America, you need that vibrant, imaginative, entrepreneurial thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something to be said also, and there's a danger in dismissing the old heads.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the old heads, look, there are timeless things. Like what I wouldn't give to have my father and your grandfather sitting there now and be able to say, hey, what do you think about this? Now, they wouldn't know how to do a pivot table on an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know how to do a pivot table on an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, I'm helping you with that stuff.
So, I mean, and that's like, that's a very simple, I don't mean it like that, because there are brilliant young people that are bringing in energy and expertise, and it's a very important thing, and a perspective. I mean, look, so there are timeless things, and there is wisdom from those who have lived through. I mean, as much as things change, they actually stay the same. Human nature is human nature, and everything else. But some of the things that we're going through in society now, and the generational changes, and whether it's racism and all these kind of things. I grew up with a father who wasn't like that, but I had other people in that I was aware they looked at things a little bit differently. Now, I would think you grew up with mom, and it was never like that. I never wanted to. That would never take place. That kind of discussions or thoughts or anything like that in our home. And you're going to have eventually families. So generationally, like that kind of influence of the youth and perspective and the way that people look at things, not just from a technology standpoint, is very important as long as it's well-meaning, and it's not like let's throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's take the best of the best from whether it was from the founding of the country or whatever it is. Let's recognize the flaws, but let's take the best of the best and aspire for the greatness that it can be, and have that the confluence of the old heads and the young people.
Mm-hmm.
But so we do have a disagreement about this sometimes, but because you can't generalize and say somebody shouldn't. I don't think generalize in the same way that I know millennial, whatever. I mean, there's a trap in that.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's always a trap in making blanket statements for anything.
Right.
You'll get caught up.
Yeah.
You just can't do that.
So,
this one's a two-part question from Paul McNatt. Why are you interested in 401ks? I think he mainly
that's you, right?
No. I think it is you because I've talked about you always harping on us contributing to our 401ks. But hold on. And there's a second part. And what is your view of how I grew up to what I am now? As in, like, how do you view me in what you thought I was going to grow up into and what I am actually kind of doing?
Yeah, so the 401k thing, it's more like...
That's mom, maybe.
No, it's not. It's more like... Well, mom was really good with that. I mean, she saved her money and invested it and everything else. And I see the benefit of doing that. I think it's something you will thank us for down the road. Even if you make a gazillion dollars doing whatever you're doing, you'll look at that 401k and you'll say, when you're my age, and you're going to be like, oh, that's pretty good, and it gives you a luxury, or you leave it to your children, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, the idea of the years and your advantage, you know, and all that kind of stuff. It's a good thing to plan for.
I mean, to this day, every time my dad gets like in person with my sister or on the phone with my sister, he asks what her 401k is at. He's like, "Oh, what's it at now?" And it'll be like the next day.
And it's not it's not like a materialistic thing. It's more like just plan for the future
security
down the
blanket.
road. Yeah. And then are you turning out? Mom and I both felt that all three of you would be successful in the sense of you would find something you want to do and do it. I never had any doubt about that with you. You know, you did the modeling, you pursued that. I knew that would be a good experience because there would be ups and downs with it, and there'd be a lot of rejection, and it would force you into this, you know, certain areas. I know that you're entrepreneurial and you want to do that, and you have a good work ethic, high character, and all that stuff. So, I mean, you are where I would expect you to be.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's fair.
yeah.
I feel I don't know. I think it would be tough for my parents to kind of have projected or guessed where I would be.
No.
Even back in high school, I mean, I just remember the only thing talking about is like I wanted to go work on Wall Street. Like all I wanted to do was be a trader at one point. That was all that mattered. So at that time, you probably would have said, "Oh, he's going to."
Yeah, that's what I would have thought, and we would have, you know, helped support you in any way we could.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Okay.
But those things change.
What's the most important? This is asked by Hank.wh. What's the most important thing that being a father taught you? Did fatherhood change your perspective on "quote unquote" being a man? You can answer them in two parts if you want.
What's the first one?
What's the most important thing that being a father taught you?
I mean, you know, that it's just, you know, that you don't have all the answers. I don't really know how to answer that one. I'm a little stumped by that because I don't know if there's one thing. I mean, I'm still learning because you guys you're older, you're going through these experiences. So, what's the one thing? I mean, really, that you're not going to know. You can know the important things, hopefully, of how your child will, you know, develop as a person and everything else, but you're not going to know exactly what their dreams are going to be. So, accepting that and just embracing their journey on that, I guess. And then my ideas about being a man. You know, I had a good role model in my father. I mean, he was a hard worker, worked with his hands a lot, but he was also incredibly well read and loved to cook and do this. So it was like, and was not afraid to show his emotions. I mean, like, you know, tears if needed or whatever. Passionate guy. So I don't know, like, when it says to be a man, I mean, it's really to be a good person, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's like one of these things where, I mean, there's a lot of debate I know about like gender and all that kind of stuff. But I just, if you go
with how he said it,
there's no. You want the best qualities of like the greatest generation of selflessness and doing for others in service, and so whether it's your family and fidelity, loyalty, all those things. But then that's something for a woman too, or a non-binary. You know what I mean?
I think
like as a person,
he probably just meant more of like, and I'll talk to just how I was raised. Like there were no like gender rules or like you have to be
roles.
This way. Roles is what I
right,
meant, not rules. You have to be this way because you're a guy. Like if I wanted to explore painting, do it. If I wanted, they put me in piano when I was younger, like start studying piano. If anything that I wanted to do, you know, as long as it was what's the word? You know, productive, you were going to support any of us doing it. It didn't matter whether it was historically, you know, women did this or whatever. Like I love to cook. I got my cooking from you, right? And
I get my dad like to cook.
Yeah. And you can say like what you want, but it was never. You could always just do whatever you wanted.
Yeah, but like it's an interesting question about being a man. Like so, like just being a just being a good person and being there for your loved ones and knowing that you're going to go to the mat, you're going to go the distance to protect them, to provide for them, regardless of man or woman. I mean,
Yeah.
like, you know,
My
mom would do
yeah,
the same.
yeah, she'd do anything.
And do that, and be prepared to go the distance you have to go.
Okay. I think
that
that's
it?
all the question. Yeah. And so I'm going to wrap it up here because we're out of questions. Unless there's anything you wanted to say.
Nope.
But yeah, so that's episode 4. We're already on episode 4 of the Marcus Milione podcast. I appreciate you if you have made it this far in listening. This was my dad. There's probably some more, pointed topics we could talk about if you want him back as a guest again, with a specific list of things to talk about after hearing kind of a more general overview of his life. But thanks for tuning in, and we will be back in 2 weeks, or I will be back in 2 weeks with another episode.